Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tank Observers podcast. My name is Jackson McCarty, and this is not the usual suspect.
No.
I'm sorry to cut you off there.
No, you're good.
Usually this is where I would say alongside my co-host Chris Barr, but I'm back in Arkansas. We got a new partner in town, Kaden. Introduce yourself, buddy.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kaden. Me and Jackson have a pretty extensive history together. I've been on a pod with him before.
Yes, yeah, you've been on the channel. We reviewed the All Decades team.
You're right,
I believe.
exactly.
Yeah, all the way back in January or.
It was like the beginning of quarantine. It was like March or so, maybe
Okay.
April.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we've got Kaden. I called football and basketball with him all throughout my high school. Been a good buddy of mine for years now, and finally get to do an in-person pod with
There
you.
we go.
Something we've talked about for literally years.
Years and years and years.
Yeah. So today, what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be looking at some of the bowl game announcements, your 6 games, if Notre Dame deserved to get in, all that jazz. So, without further ado, let's kick it off with that Notre Dame. Do you think, Kaden, do you think Notre Dame deserved to be in?
I mean, if you're going to go with the overwhelming consensus, no.
No.
And there's not a chance they deserve to be in. There's several things you could go off of, but I think the biggest thing, the most recent thing you can go off of really is their most impressive win was against a Clemson team that was not 100%. They had several key starters on defense missing, and then obviously, I mean, that guy on offense helps out a little bit.
Some guy with long hair, undrafted free agent. Nothing.
Something like maybe a first overall pick. I don't know.
Travis Lawrence.
Something. Yeah, Sunshine from Remember the Giants.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
But that was their most impressive win, and it went to double overtime or whatever overtime it was. They took it the distance with a team that probably didn't have a business being there without those starters. And that was keyed as their most impressive win. But then they just had this rematch against them, and they got absolutely exposed. It was a boat race. It wasn't even close.
No, man. And it was to the point where they could put in their backups for real this time. They wasn't an option. Last time they had to roll with backups. Now, Clemson beats them comfortably. And the way that I wish the committee would have decided this, to add some freshness, we've seen Notre Dame get blown out in the playoffs. I believe they've been outscored 144 points since the playoff format has started.
That's not even just the playoff format. That is like their last, for the last 14-something years, however long it's been, that's their bowl games. That's every bowl game they've played in. Going back to like 2006, around that era.
Just the fact that I know Notre Dame has the pedigree that you want. They're kind of what you want Michigan to be, in a sense. They hang around, they fight hard, and then they've got that name rec. I would have rather seen them put A&M at 3, which I know is a hard thing to convince people to do, and then put Ohio State at 4. That way you're getting Bama versus Ohio State, which we haven't seen yet in a while, and then you get Clemson versus A&M.
Yeah, it's just for them to throw Notre Dame in there like that. You just kind of look at it. Okay, put it to you like this: they had the blessing of playing in a conference this year. They're not an independent. They got to play in a conference this year. However, it's the watered-down ACC.
It is.
The outside of, like we talked about earlier, outside of, let's say, Clemson, maybe Miami, and they had a good year this year, so maybe North Carolina.
Yes.
The rest of that league is just, they're bottom dwellers. They're basement teams.
NC State saw a ranking, but they're not.
I could see that, but it's just, so they get to play in this watered-down conference. They go undefeated in that watered-down conference. But here's the thing. The only people who actually truly believed in that undefeated record, it was the media.
Yeah.
The fans watching at home every single week. Undefeated that's a great thing, because I'm going to touch on later, Cincy, going undefeated in any league is impressive. Any sport's impressive.
Very.
But when you're watching these Notre Dame games, you can tell there's a feel to the game, and you can tell it's just going to happen again. It's Notre Dame.
They feel like, when you watch a Notre Dame game, they're winning, but they don't feel like they're controlling. They're rolling with the punches and coming out on top.
Right.
Rather than handing out the punches and saying, you know what, you're an inferior team, and we're going to show it.
Right.
Every week it feels like it's a non-convincing victory.
I completely agree with that. And that's the thing is, what's so frustrating about it is they do this every year. Like you just talked about it. I don't know if you're going to go to the extreme I'm about to go to, but they're frauds every year. They're fraudulent. They have this super great regular season. They look great. They usually have the benefit of working their own schedule, being independent. They can pick who they play. This year they did play in the ACC. But again, they have the opportunity here to get their way into the playoffs. But every single time, dude, every single time you see this and it happens again. They're getting put in off their name brand. Yeah. It's their name value.
It's the logo on the shirt, not what they're putting on the field.
And what they do is, when this happens, the optic that the committee is providing is so bad. It's so bad because it makes it look like it was never going to be anything else.
Yeah.
From the start, it makes it look like there was never going to be a different four. And when you do that, the problem with you doing that is, what gives these other programs incentive to even play?
No, you're 100% right. And a team that has lost a lot of incentive to play is Indiana. You see North Carolina get put over them in a New Year's Six bowl game. They're ranked behind Iowa State and I believe, I can't remember who the other team is, but there's somebody that is a 2-loss team in a very not awesome conference this year. They got put behind them. So how does the committee justify not only keeping Indiana away from the Big Ten championship game because they bent their rules for Ohio State, but how do they justify keeping them out of the New Year's Six bowls entirely?
It's something you have to really think about. You have to look into because, okay, if you're gonna go off something like what we touched on earlier, you're gonna have to explain something. You're gonna have to explain, like, I'm gonna kind of pull from one of the guys I like to watch a lot, Joe Klatt.
Yeah.
So you're pulling from these imaginary rules already.
Right.
We can't go off imaginary rules anymore.
No,
we can't do that. There's no set format to what they're doing.
No.
It's something new every year. They're going off different rules every year. Like the new thing they're doing this year is, like I touched on earlier, your most impressive win. So that's okay, but at the same time, was it the most impressive win last year or the year before that? It's something. There's different criteria every year, and it's like these teams have to be scratching their head. Like, what are we trying to? What does our resume need to be?
Yeah, I mean, IU beats. They picked up a big win. Cannot remember who it was against right now. I apologize, but they picked up a huge win. Only moved up one spot. Ohio State's allowed to play in the Big Ten championship game over them, despite not getting to 6 games. And Northwestern gets picked for Big Ten representation in the New Year's Six games. Even after Penix went down with injury, they proved that they could still win.
Right.
And they're not getting any love for it.
Well, they beat a Michigan team. Yeah. However, it was a down year for that program, but they were still ranked at the time of being beat. Penn State was ranked 8th whenever they beat them.
Right.
So those are huge wins for the program. The thing about it is, North Carolina makes that New Year's Six bowl going 7-3,
right,
in a considerably weaker conference.
Considerably weaker.
Like, it's not even close.
No.
And that's the thing about it. And then, like I touched on, if you want to go off most impressive wins, North Carolina's most impressive win, I guess you're going to have to go Miami.
Yeah.
And that was a shootout. It was close.
Yeah, there's really no defense played on that one.
And then Indiana's most impressive wins, they beat the Penn State team that was ranked 8th at the time. And then they beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a solid football team.
Wisconsin was the one I was thinking of, where they only went from 12 to 11 after beating a very good football team.
Yeah.
But even if you're going to say, oh, Penn State lost a lot of games this year, you still thought that they were ranked very high. You thought they were a very good team, and then Indiana beats them. You can't just make that a non-impressive win now.
Right, and exactly, to tee off on what you're saying right there is, for them to beat Penn State, regardless of how bad their season went on to be, when they beat them, at the time of them beating them, they were an 8th-ranked team. That's a top 10 team.
Yes.
It's just, that's my biggest problem with the committee is they have this addiction to name brand. And if that's the thing, like, they've proven over and over again that it's about money.
Yes.
So you would think that they would want to go with these success stories, these I don't want to call them Cinderella teams, but Cinderella teams.
Yeah.
You would think that they would want to go with something like that because I feel like that would drive so many more views, so much more money would go into that rather than the same old teams that we see every single year.
It 100% would, because you're getting to see something fresh. We don't want to see Clemson versus Ohio State again and again and again.
Viewer fatigue.
Yeah, it's great. It's great TV for financial reasons because you're getting a lot of fans, but it's not fun to sit here and rewatch the same thing. It's why people didn't like the Patriots. One such team that had a very logical case, in my opinion, to get in was Cincinnati. And they got left on the outside looking in. They're playing Georgia now. How do you think they fare, and do you think they can realistically keep undefeated in grasp?
Well, and like I mentioned to you earlier when we were making these notes, I told you how I feel about Cincy. Major UCF vibes from like 2017, just less annoying.
And hey, UCF knocked off Auburn in that time.
And I think something that has to be talked about more, regardless of the conference they play in, Cincy only played great football. Like, you didn't see them come out a week and just say, we're going to play down the competition. They played good every week.
Yeah.
And another thing to talk about, their defense doesn't get talked about enough. They didn't even allow 100 points on the season. They played great defense. And that's not something you can say about these Conference USA teams. I mean, a lot of times it's a lot of offense. And then when you do see teams that don't play great, it's because their offense kind of, it's iffy at times.
Right.
But that's great to say. They played, 9 games?
Yeah, 9 or 10.
And to not allow, that's a crazy stat to me. I don't think it, and that was the thing about it. No one else in their conference had allowed less than that.
Yeah.
Everyone else had 100 plus. So that's something that really you can tee off on. That's something you can say is a key point of their team is their defense. And another thing is they had impressive wins over a solid Army team.
Yes.
The Army team is very solid.
Thank God they got a bowl, by the way.
I'm extremely glad they did.
Thank the Lord.
That Army team is great. They got a solid win over them. They beat a solid SMU team.
Yes.
SMU's been good for the last few years.
Buchele is not a hyped-up quarterback, but he wins games.
Yeah, he is like we touched on earlier when we were talking amongst ourselves. We were talking about Arkansas quarterbacks.
Right.
Jefferson, you made the comment, he's a playmaker.
Yes.
I think the same way with him. He's a playmaker.
Buchele reminds me of a small school Jameis Winston, in a sense. He's going to get it downfield. He might throw a pick, but he's going to move that thing.
And you like your Jameis Winston.
I love Jameis Winston, man. But regardless, I do really enjoy Cincinnati. I want them to win. I'm an SEC homer through and through, and I would never lie about that. But I'm tired of the AAC's disrespect. That being said, if this was the same Georgia team from 3-4 weeks ago before JT Daniels came in, I'd say they could beat them. JT Daniels moves the needle and makes them look like a top 4 team in college football.
Yeah, and that was one thing I was going to say. I'm afraid Georgia is, it's kind of corny to say, but I think they're built different.
They are.
It's not the same team from 2 years ago, but to be fair, their only 2 losses came against Bama, the best team in the nation, and then Florida. Florida is a solid team.
Very solid team.
I would love to see Cincy win, but I don't know if I see it happening.
To make sure, or not to kind of seem like, oh, you should give these teams a break, but had they drawn Florida, I think they'd win.
Oh, yeah. I think that they match up much better against that.
Anybody else in the New Year's Six outside of the playoffs, I can say pretty convincingly, yeah, I think Cincy's got that. But with how Georgia's been playing, with Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes and the edge rushers they've got coming out, and JT Daniels getting a hold of that ball and doesn't look like he's willing to let go, I think that they could realistically have gotten in the playoffs and beaten Ohio State.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Georgia is one of those teams that they get a top 5 recruiting class frequently. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. A lot of that is happening because I would almost want to make the argument that the committee is driving these recruits to the certain schools.
Yeah.
Because there's only 5 or 6 teams that have ever won a college football playoff game.
Right.
Because it's the same teams every single year. The committee goes off that. And here's what's happening. you've got these teams, you've got these players who are like, hey man, if I want to actually play for something, I'm going to go to this school. I'm not. They've made it very, very obvious. I'm not going to get a shot to play in a college football playoff game if I go anywhere else.
It doesn't matter how great Jamie Chadwell's Coastal Carolina recruiting package is. They're not getting looked at.
No.
It doesn't matter what Luke Fickell says in Iowa State. They don't care about Iowa State. They care about Blue Bloods.
Yeah, and then it's a sad thing to see because it's going to continue to be this way unless, one, they change the format, or unless, two, they kind of maybe put some caps on scholarships. Like, there would have to be some severe tinkering with that. I mean,
I get worried about the idea of taking away scholarships before pay to play because I don't want there to be a situation where kids don't get to go to college for free.
Right, yeah, that's my biggest issue with it.
I don't like that idea of taking the chances away, but there does need to be some form of parity and some way to limit how you get people. But regardless, talking about those SEC teams, a lot of these guys are having opening jobs now, and they're going to be facing uphill battles. We're looking at Tennessee, Vandy, Auburn now. Out of the Coastal versus Liberty Bowl game, the Cure Bowl, which of those two head coaches, Jamie Chadwell and Hugh Freeze, do you think would have a better chance of jumping ship, going to the SEC, and making it work?
It's going to be a homer pick.
Yeah.
Come to the sip.
Come to the sip, baby.
Hugh Freeze, man. I love that guy. And I think you have to look back at how successful he was at Ole Miss, regardless of how tainted it may seem now. That run that he had with that team almost feels like a fever dream. If you were to look, you look at this team and look at how they've been the last 5 to 6 years. Imagine trying to tell someone who's just now who's a new fan of the sport, someone who just watched NFL growing up. You tell them they just started watching college football. Hey, you know that Hugh Freeze is like one of the only coaches that beat Nick Saban back-to-back years.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't believe it.
They were like,
that guy at Liberty? What are you talking about?
No, dude, come on. You're not. That's not true.
No, you're kidding.
But the thing about it is, I think all too often, it's the fun thing to hate on SEC. I think it's like, oh, you guys think you guys are elite. You guys think y'all are top tier. Okay, well, these other coaches do just as great. I think Dabo Swinney's probably one of the top guys you can look at for that. Yeah, oh, we play great football over here just as good as they play in the SEC.
There's a lot of great coaching, but the recruiting limits. Like, look at Pat Fitzgerald out in Northwestern or Fickell in Iowa State. It's just the SEC gets those people.
Right, and that's the thing about it, though, is because they get those people, that's why that league is so, talked about. It's talked about so highly because of that, because the difficulty in the SEC is it's second to none. I mean, it is literally the top of the ladder.
It's the Mecca.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think Hugh would have more success. I mean, okay. I want to say he'll have the most success initially if he were to jump ship, head over there, take that Auburn gig.
Yes.
I think he would have the most success initially because he has experience in that league. He knows what works. He knows his way around it.
He's a proven commodity.
Chadwell, I'm not saying he couldn't succeed in the SEC, but I think it is a hard adjustment. Yeah. It's not a league where you can jump ship and just have immediate success.
Fair.
I mean, look at Mizzou.
Yeah.
He's having a great season. He'll probably win Coach of the Year.
Eli Drinkwitz?
Yeah, he'll probably win Coach of the Year. He still went 5-5. It's 5-6.
Right.
Or whatever it was.
It's 5-5.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, they drew even.
That's a great season. I don't want to knock that.
Especially for Missouri with how they've been.
Right. That's an exceptional season. But that's what you have to look at in the SEC is a great season for a first-year coach.
Yeah.
That 5-5, 500, that's awesome. But it's still 5-5.
Yeah, it is. It's tough to look at and say 500 is where you want to be. Look at Sam Pittman in Arkansas.
Right.
He didn't hit 500, and people are raving about him because his teams came in and fought. And no matter how hard they fought, they were still going down to those big dogs. But the reason I personally think Chadwell would be a better take him now, plug him in, is because you look at Coastal giving him a 7-year deal, and that immediately jumps off the page as, oh, they know exactly what they have. They know that Jamie Chadwell is a recruiting genius. Because I really do think he's one of the better recruiters in the country. And what he puts on the field, he gets the best out of these guys. Taron Jackson is one of my favorite players in the country. He's an edge rusher out of Coastal. Absolutely love watching his tape.
Mm-hmm.
Freeze is proven, but I like the idea of getting another Sunbelt recruit in like Eli Drinkwitz. Put him in Tennessee. I would love to see Chadwell in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're having a guy who is going to rally his troops. People love. He's going to be able to recruit. He's going to be able to take the state of Tennessee. Vandy's not challenging him. Auburn is a completely opposite case. You're having to go head-to-head in Alabama in your home turf. You don't win that head-to-head. If he can get his hands on the Tennessee gig, they've already got to feel like they're waiting to have that youth revolution of just rise up through the ranks and finally bring something back to the program. Pruitt couldn't do it. Butch Jones couldn't do it. I think Chadwell could do it.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you on that, actually. I don't think he would have as much success at Auburn.
No.
But Tennessee, I mean, year after year, they have great recruiting classes.
Yeah.
And people want to go to Old Smoky Top. I mean, like, that is a great program, and I agree with that completely. They have a lot of youth. They have a lot of excitement. I think maybe throughout the years they could make some noise.
Yeah. Going back to that question, looking at if it's going to be the Auburn gig, I do think Hugh Freeze is right on the money. He knows what he's doing. He knows what it feels like to be near the top of the SEC. And it's not going to be a culture shock. It's not going to be something that he gets hit with and throws him off his rhythm.
Right.
Chadwell's used to being the underdog, much like Tennessee. It's these teams kind of fit both of their brands. And hypothetically, if Tennessee wanted to pay Chadwell's buyout and we got to see both of these happen, that would be
exciting for the league. I mean, and it's the thing, because I don't want to take away from Chadwell's success in the Fun Belt. Like, he has shown already, like immediately this year in itself, he has shown that is his league.
To keep App State down, one of the better consistent teams in just college football, period.
Yeah.
That is an honor.
Yeah, and he's shown that like that's his league now. Like Coastal is like that's like I guess the blue blood of the Fun Belt. Like
they've taken it.
They're gonna be great. I love the Mullets.
Yes.
That was fun. This has been a fun year.
The Chanticleers have been a very fun team, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on the coaching carousel. But Kaden, this wraps up our first episode, but don't worry, you'll be back next week.
Yeah.
We'll be doing one more before I head back down to Florida. It'll be a real good time. But for now, I'm Jax McCarty.
I'm Kaden Brown.
We'll see you guys next time.
But is he the best player in this draft on his own? Without a doubt. Please show me